Now let's get into our first discussion now. An explosion that damaged the rail track and part of a train on the Kaduna-Abuja route last week, Wednesday, has given rise to questions on the safety of rail transportation in Nigeria, especially with the growing audacity of criminals. Train services on the Kaduna-Abuja has now resumed after it was earlier suspended due to the attack on the rail line by some yet-to-be-identified persons. The Kaduna-Abuja road has become infamous for attacks, kidnappings, and even killings, which is why the rail system was believed rather, to be a safer option. However, this attack has now shown the dangers and risks associated with this mode of transportation. How can Nigeria efficiently tackle its insecurity challenges to ensure that the lives of more Nigerians are not cut short by criminals? That will be the crux of our discussion in the next couple of minutes. So joining us now, we have strategy consultant Dikbo Yewole here in the studio. Dikbo, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Mike.
Great. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Great. And I have Professor Olukayode Oyeshiku, a professor of transport systems planning, urban planning, and development planning. Professor, it's good to have you this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Now, let me start with you, Professor. First of all, let's, because we're focusing on rail transport right now, it takes a lot from what we see to lay rail tracks from anywhere to anywhere as it is. But talk to us basically, what are the factors one considers before it is determined that a rail track should go through this route or through that route or through this city or through the other city and all of that?
Thank you very much. I think there are a number of factors that are involved, three of which are of great importance. Number one is the density of the population that it is around that place. You want to develop a rail track that will have a minimum impact of environmental and people's damage around that particular route. The second one is to consider the terrain. And considering the terrain, you just have to be sure that there are not too many creeks, too many waters, or a mass of rocks along that particular route. And number three, overall, is the costs of laying those particular tracks. If you factor in that particular cost and you will ensure that the amount of compensation that you're likely to pay to the people whose properties and lives are going to be greatly affected, and perhaps the minimum damage to the environment. And I think you are ready to go. These three factors are of importance in laying that particular tracks of the road.
All right, we'll come back to talk about the Abuja Kaduna rail more particularly. Now, Dikbo, let me come to you on this. Rail transport generally is seen to be safe, one of the safest.
Yes. And
because we've had less, from even reports across the world, in comparative terms, we've had less rail, accidents by rail than others and all of that. But in recent times, we've seen concerns regarding the rail transport, especially the Abuja-Kaduna route. And last Wednesday was the peak of it so far. What do you make of this development, though?
Well, for me, the events of last Wednesday were quite shocking, and they were really quite frightening because, I mean, like you said earlier in the introduction, that the Abuja-Kaduna road in itself was sort of a hub for a lot of criminal activity. And now you have the rail line plying that same route, and then they're being bedeviled by the same criminal elements. So the question is, what has been done by the government? So for me, I would say that maybe instilling confidence back into people to understand that rail transportation is safe is really about tackling insecurity in this case, because that is one thing that we have as a common denominator. Either it's going by road or it's going by rail. I'll go back to something I usually say on this platform and every other one, that until our government understands that insecurity for one, insecurity against one is insecurity against all, we'll keep having these challenges. We cannot solve the issue of insecurity in isolation. So when we're trying to address the insecurity that surrounds the rail, it should be holistic. addressing it for the people who go by road, addressing it for people who go to schools that are being attacked and kidnapped. So the issue of insecurity is something that is quite fundamental and quite uniform in this conversation that I think that we need to have addressed. I need to have it addressed immediately, because either you like it or not, it will keep affecting various forms of commerce. Now it's affected road transportation, now it's affecting the rail. So the question is, where are they going to go next? Are people going to be afraid to go by rail? Are they going to be afraid to go by road? Not everybody can afford to travel by air. So what are we saying? Are we going to have certain level of commerce along a particular axis being grounded to a halt? Because for me, these things need to be addressed, and we need to look at it a lot more holistically.
Okay. Now, Professor, let me come to you on this. The point there is, we've also seen reports in recent times where rail tracks, were stolen, and it was quite shocking. It was the first time, personally, it was the first time for me to hear that rail tracks were stolen, dismantling the rail tracks and then taking, the tracks somewhere else. Now, this also posed some level of security challenges. Now, talk to us basically, how can we ensure safety and security on either the rail tracks or the rail route, and for trains and for people generally who ply train transportation?
Well, I guess Depo has actually done a great deal of the summary in addressing this particular issue you raised. The issue of security along the rail tracks, the issue of security even on the passenger routes, particularly between Kaduna and Abuja, it's an issue that's been taken with levity, really. And generally speaking, it is pervasive in the country, and we may not be able to take the rail issue in isolation. But specifically, rail security is perhaps one of the most guided across the world. There is hardly anything that you should be doing on the rail track that it will not be to the information of those that are in charge of the operations and services of that particular rail tracks. A number of rail tracks are also electrically wired, that if you actually get to a particular section, there will be an alert on those that are concerned to ensure that they track those who are trying to perforate into the rail track. The one for Nigeria is as you said, is very shocking, and I think we need to advance the technology of actually doing so. We need to monitor those rail tracks virtually now and then, to be sure that nothing is actually done to tamper with it, except again that we take the issue of security nationally as being very serious, rather than taking it with indolence as it is done across board. We might continue to have recurrence of this particular incident. But there are advanced technologies that can be put in place to track the rail tracks and be assured that notice is actually done to it.
Staying with you, Professor, I know you have consulted and developed train services for different countries and corporations across the world. Now, if we compare some of the countries you have been to and helped with the situation in Nigeria, what are some of the peculiarities with the rail system in Nigeria? Before now, we've often been talking about, reviving train transportation or rail transportation in Nigeria across the country, especially for heavy duty services and cargo and so on. What are the peculiarities in Nigeria from what you have noticed?
Thank you so much. Nigerian rail system has been neglected for a very, very long time. And before 1999 or so, for almost 25, 26 years, there seems to be nothing that has been done. And by 2006, there was a renewal of rehabilitation and the maintenance of those tracks. But more importantly, by 2006, a new agreement was actually done for the standardization of of the gauge that we once experienced. In addition, there was a 25-year strategic plan for the rail renewal across the country. The peculiarity with the Nigerian environment is just a complete neglect of a rail system, of a transportation system that it is mostly safe, it is cheaper, and can carry heavy loads of freight across the length and breadth of the country. If you make a comparison between probably 3 countries that have actually participated in the work, Mexico, Brazil, and North Korea. Mexico has a rail track of about 27,000 kilometers. Brazil has about 29,000 kilometers. And Nigeria, with equal population sizes of Brazil, is just having as little as about less than 4,000 kilometers. So it is actually the act of development of rail transportation system. If we have those rail tracks that are long and across the length and breadth of the country, there are 3 other things that we associate with it. Human capital are very much developed. Technology of this are also very much developed. And of course, it brings about the impetus for social and political development of the country. But if this is actually absent as a result of neglect, then there is little or nothing that can be done to enhance the development of the rail service. So basically, it was a neglect that makes the Nigerian rail system absolutely different from others that are well known to me.
All right, now, Dikbo, if you see how the government is taking the revisiting of the rail transport system, it tells you that government is giving a priority to a great extent, at least from what we see.
Yes.
When it comes to the security of it, how much more do you think they should do right now to make things different? Because it seems like transportation by train is becoming the last resort of anybody right now.
Yes, so ideally, I mean, like Prof said, it is globally a cheap mode of transportation. So ideally, it's something, it's a mode of transportation that a lot of people should embrace. But in terms of issue of security and securing the rail tracks, we can also look at having CCTVs at different distances. Maybe it's every 1 kilometer on a particular line. He talked about sensors, and the sensors don't just let you know if you're trying to remove the rail tracks. The sensors let you know how fast the train is going, where the train is in real time, and other information that to feed back to the central command to let you know that, okay, you know what, another train is coming, you need to slow down maybe by 10 kilometers so that the other train can pass. You're approaching a junction, you're going too fast, you're going too slow. So that's the purpose of those sensors, and we need those sensors. We need CCTV as well, because I mean that's really we need technology. That's really what we have to do, because we can't have armed police on the trains like we have in some of these buses that go far distances. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This is 2021. So we need to embrace technology to see how we can use technology to make the rail system and the train system safer and to be more effective. I mean, it's really just a remarkable way of mode of transportation, really, because you find that when we do have a functional rail system in Nigeria, a lot of urban centers will be decongested. I mean, back in the day, we had people who lived in Ibadan and worked in Lagos.
Exactly.
They did that every single day. They got to Lagos on time, they got back to Ibadan on time, and they lived their lives. So those are part of the developments that the rail system is supposed to bring. And to be very fair and to be objective, the revitalization of the rail system by this current administration is quite admirable. It's quite admirable, and yes, can they do more? They can always do more. There's always room for improvement. We're talking about securing those rail lines right now. So these are the measures that I believe that they can put in place. The sensors, like Prof said, have the CCTV at various distances that can always monitor it to know that, okay, the trains are safe, this is where it is, this is what's going on in the environment, to ensure that people further embrace the rail system, because it is in itself an engine of development in various parts of the country.
When it comes to the issue of security of rail tracks, we see how if we liken that to pipelines, we see how contracts to protect pipelines are given to certain organizations or even people or communities and all of that. Has it come to the level where we have to start thinking about that now? Because especially when we've seen where rail tracks being stolen. It's baffling, actually,
Yes,
to see that rail tracks are dismantled.
You see them being melted somewhere
Exactly,
for sale and all
turned
of that.
into something else.
Yes, so in terms of the securing it and going the model of the pipelines, I would say no. I'll still want to stick with technology, because in the end, one, we have to look at what is sustainable.
Right.
We also need to look at what is affordable. The question is, how many cameras would you need to have within the Abuja-Kaduna stretch, as opposed to having to hire maybe local communities or security agents or maybe some security firms to guard it? Because in the end, there's also room for human error. There's also a place for human corruption in it, where we know that, okay, you're the team in the community who guards the rail, and then it comes to give you maybe 20,000 as opposed to maybe 15,000 you're being paid to say that, and then you're being interrogated by the police, and then you say, oh no, we're guarding the other end of it, we didn't know what happened here. So we eliminate
factor.
Yes, so we eliminate the human factor and the human error out of it. I would want to say that we embrace the technology bit
but the point there
to
is,
ensure that it's safe.
But the point there is, if we have the issue of sensors,
Yes.
where whatever you're doing to the rail tracks,
Yes.
is being detected somewhere.
Yes.
Now, if it is somewhere in the middle of nowhere, like we have, rail tracks going through forests and deserts and
Yes.
all of those things, before anyone is going to take off from the station or the substation to get to where someone is tampering with the tracks,
Yes.
would they not have finished doing whatever they want to do?
Yes, so that's why I say we need to look at it holistically and the different measures to put in place across the different stations. Are there different points across, for example, maybe Abuja to Kaduna by rail is maybe 14 kilometers. Can we look at having maybe 2 or 3 mini stations over there where people can be stationed? Can we have, in the absence of that, we have the sensors, we have the CCTV, can we have a liaison with the police along the different communities that the rails pass, where we can always give them a call and say that, okay, can you help us look at what's going on within this particular section of the rail? So there are different ways to go about securing the rail and ensuring that it is safe for transportation.
All right. Now, Professor, let me come to you on this. Now, Nigerians, when the government was talking about reviving the rail services in Nigeria, what was in the minds of Nigerians were more of speed trains like they see in China or in Japan and so on. Of course, what we have now is better than what used to be, but they're not speed trains in that context. What would it take to have speed trains in Nigeria?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. It's the issue of the speed train for a country Nigeria is not a rocket science. The federal government seems to have taken the bull by the horn, particularly in the last 6 years or so, right? We have had a standard gauge, Abuja, Kaduna, but we equally have Lagos, Ibadan, right now, which used to take between 6 and 8 hours. In 2 hours or so, 2.5 hours, you are now in Ibadan. As long as we're beginning to do a proper rehabilitation and maintenance of what we have, we're beginning to put a faster locomotive and passenger coaches right on those standard gauge, and with time, we're beginning to also to construct certain lines, particularly with between highly congested cities that can actually move with modern technology for a faster rail services. The one for Ibadan, Lagos Ibadan, for example, for which I have traveled several times, is to the extent that is perhaps at the teething stage. And I'm sure with time, we could still gather 170 kilometers in 1 hour in such a way that within 1.5 hours between Mobolaji Johnson stations and Moniya station in Ibadan, you are there within 1 hour or so, stopping at Abeokuta for 35-40 minutes. So it is actually a function of time. The more that we actually put services in the operation of the Nigerian railways, the better for us to be able to master and perfect virtually all operational difficulties that it is on the way. I am not saying that we go in the line of 575 kilometers per hour, as you find in some parts of Germany and no, or I'm not even saying between Busan and Seoul, we have almost 375 kilometers per hour. Those are advanced, highly advanced technology that are based on the magnetic levitation technology. But the one that you can put on the standard gauges, as even it is done in a number of countries in Europe and in Asia, we could still actually have faster locomotives and passenger coaches right on our tracks if we actually have a good, maintained and rehabilitated standard gauge. We should be thinking of totally doing away with the whole gauges for passenger transport. For freight, these things are still very, very useful. We don't need to discard them. They can still be used for freights that could carry millions of tons across the country over time.
All right, now, Dikbo, in the 80s, at least, where we saw where trains carry, oil and other heavy, cargo from one part of the country to another, makes everything easier. But when the rail system collapsed and failed, we saw how they resorted to using trucks on the roads, and the roads have never really remained the same, even up until now. Now, if we have to go back to that time by trying to, let us transport oil, for instance, or crude oil, or crude oil from the southern part of the country to the north, or to the middle part of the country, and all of that. With the issue of safety now that we have concerns with, or concerns for, how feasible do you think that can be now?
Well, I believe it is possible because, in a couple of minutes we have this conversation, we've outlined different solutions. And if you can get it right, because the question now is, which one would they value more, human life or cargo? Because if you can secure human life, I think that it would be so much rocket science to secure cargo. So yes, either we're securing human life or cargo, the fact remains that the rail system must be secure, no matter what you're transporting on it. Because in the end, even if you're transporting cargo, there will be at least one human being on board, and that human being's life needs to be secured, at the very least. So yes, that needs to happen. Securing the rail line is really non-negotiable. Either we're transporting human beings, we're transporting oil, or whatever it is, cement, cargo in general. We must find a way to secure the rail lines, and we must secure them deliberately. It's not something that's just going to happen overnight. It may also not be something that would happen without any trial and error. They may make some mistakes along the line, but the question is that they be deliberate about it, because we also need to look at it in terms of cost. I like to approach things in terms of cost, especially when we're talking about the nation and we like to say we're broke. So for example, now we take a lot of these heavy cargo off the road and then we transport them by rail. Now, road transportation maintenance will be cheaper. The cost will go down a lot more because you don't get to maintain it as much as you would while they were on the road. Construction would also last longer. So overall, it is good business. It saves money, it saves cost. So why don't they look at it from that perspective to say, okay, no, we're trying to cut cost in this area. Can we look at this and see how we can secure this? Secure it with technology, which is at minimal cost, as opposed to using human beings to do it. Fine. Then you can get more humans on board. Then you can get cargo off the roads. When you get cargo off the roads, rehabilitate the roads, and then say that you maintain them. There are roads that are revisited every 3 months in this country. Why should that have to be? You find out from every 3 months, you get to revisit it every 9 months. What happens in that in the 6 month difference? You get to take that money, put it into something else. So in the end, when we say that all these things are interwoven, we need to look at it holistically. Those are the things we're trying to talk about, to say that we need to address all of these things with a bird's eye view to see how we can get things done right.
All right. Now, Professor, before I let you go, from your perspective, professionally and all of that, what do you see as a future rail system in Nigeria?
If we go by the trend of the federal government recently, I want to take a quote from Lord Lugard in 1916, when he said, "There is no escape for rail transportation in Nigerian socio-economic development." This is over 100 years ago. We still just have to fall back on rail, particularly for long distance travel. We must also encourage the rail development within our congested city. Lagos has been on these things for almost close to 16 years now, right? They required all the support that are necessary to ensure that we move passenger goods and services by rail. We do not have an escape from it. We only need to continuously mount pressure and divert as much resources from the road back to the rail to ensure that a larger number of people are moved from one place to the other, and the goods and services are also actually moved to save lives and property, which is often damaged by the lack of safety that we have on road.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Olukayode Oyeshiku, Professor Transport Systems Planning. We really appreciate you for your time on the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Dikbo Yewole, thank you very much for your insight as well.
Thank you for having me.
But I'm keeping you for my paper review next.
Not a problem.
All right.